Hey guys, Dan here, and it's Dan Does Disney. Tim is over here on Zoom. Hello, Tim.
Hi, everybody.
And Tim, you actually have the DVD copy of the movie we're going to talk about today.
We will be talking about Johnny Tremain.
Yes, what a classic. Now, this one is a little bit out of order. We've talked about that in our last couple of videos because it's not on Disney Plus. So we got the DVD of it and passed it around. So this was, I think, what, 2 movies ago, right?
Yes, 2 movies ago. It should have been right before Perry, and then we did Old Yeller as well.
Okay, right. Which has a couple things in common with this, as we'll find out. The director, for one.
Yes.
But we'll get into that. So, as with Dan Does Disney, I'm going to talk a little bit about the background. Then we'll throw to Tim for the storyline and such, and then we'll kind of go back and forth on the movie itself. And you actually figured this out before I did, Tim, because you did a little more background before watching the movie. But this was going to be a 2-part episode of Disneyland, the TV show originally, that then was turned into this feature film.
Yes. I'm not sure I know of any other really examples that I could think of that was like, hey, this is going to be a TV show, and then we're going to make it into a movie instead, right before making it into a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly seen TV shows cobbled together to form a movie, and not even just Davy Crockett, but like I Love Lucy did it in the 50s. There's a few different examples of things that already aired on television were not ever meant for theaters, but then thrown up to theaters anyway. But this was shot in with the intention of being on the Disneyland show, and then Walt said, well, this actually looks pretty great. Let's just make it a movie instead. Yeah, I can't think of any other examples of that.
Yeah.
And because Walt is Walt, of course, he filmed everything in color, even though the Disneyland show was in black and white. Most, like 95% of TVs at the time, were black and white. But he shot things in color. So I guess once he got the film back for this, he was like, well, this looks good enough to just throw on up. And it did air on Disneyland about a year later in its original 2-part version. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about the DVD extras, but there's some stuff about that there. But because of the nature of it being originally made for a TV show, there's not a whole lot of background available on this. It's funny, like Wiki has a little bit, but like the 4 or 5 Disney sites that I usually go to, basically Wiki just copied whatever they had on there. And so I don't think I know much more than you do, Tim, about all of this stuff. But I can tell you that the budget for it was $700,000. I have no information about how much it made, but obviously it was successful enough that Walt was going to, turn a part of it into a Disneyland attraction, which we'll talk about a little bit. But first, I want to talk about this dude, Robert Stevenson, because Tim, we talked about him last week on Old Yeller.
Yes.
And we said that, he went to do all these Disney films. So this was the very first of the Disney films, even though you and I watched Old Yeller first. This was the first one, and he went on to direct some 15 Disney movies over the next 2 decades or so, including a lot of the Herbies and the Mary Poppins, in which he got an Oscar for, or maybe he was just nominated for it, but either way. So a couple of parts of this movie were released separately to schools, the way they had done with the Disney Nature, or was it called True Life Adventures back then, how those movies did it. So because Johnny Tremain has some semblance of historical elements to it with the Boston Tea Party and stuff, 2 different sequences were released for educational purposes, and both were also featured on Disneyland's TV show in the 50s. So have you been to Disneyland, Tim, or just Disney World?
I've been to both.
Okay, so Originally, this was slated after this big hit movie to be a part of Disneyland called Liberty Street, which was going to be an offshoot of Main Street USA. But that actually didn't end up happening, which I was confused by because they have on the DVD like the clip of Disneyland where he's talking all about, oh, this is what it's going to be, and da, 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 da. So I didn't realize that it actually never materialized. But after he died, they sort of took the concept for it and turned it into Liberty Square at Walt Disney World, which opened in the 70s. And there is the elm tree found on the Disney property, moved and actually transplanted by Disney engineers, which now is called the Liberty Tree, with 13 lanterns around it serving the 13 colonies. I don't really remember seeing this when I was at Disney a couple of years ago, but I assume it's still there.
Oh, it's there. I mean, I've sat underneath that tree many times, not knowing that it was anything special than just the tree. I didn't realize that it was the Liberty Tree from this movie, or representing this movie from this movie, and a lot of real life Liberty trees that existed in the United States. I didn't know, because I've been to Liberty Square. That's where the Hall of Presidents is, and there isn't really any other rides there besides the Hall of Presidents, but there's a lot of eateries, and like it looks very like colonial Williamsburg a little bit like there.
Yeah.
But I probably sat on the wall of that Liberty underneath the Liberty Tree. I think the last time I went there, I think it was right there when we sat there for a parade or something like that. I never knew that was Liberty Tree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I did pass it because I feel like we walked all around the park, but it must not have struck me as I mean, is it like near Swiss Family Robinson area? Because that's sort of like old timey.
No, that's in Adventureland.
Okay, this would be in Frontierland.
No, that's in Frontierland. Yes, Frontierland.
Right.
Liberty Square is like right off of Main Street USA, like right by the castle. And it's like a very small section there. On your way to, I think, Adventureland, you pass through it.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think I do know where that is. Though we went mostly during the day though because we had little kids. So I like the lanterns and stuff. I don't know if I would have really recognized that because maybe they weren't on.
I don't think I realized that there was lanterns in this tree for the 13 original colonies.
Okay.
Like, I just knew that there was a tree there. I pulled up pictures of it and it looks like there might be a little small sign in front of it, like a plaque saying that it might be the Liberty Tree and what it represents. But I mean, it's not like it's a well-known thing. I don't know if it's like on any maps. Like, they have eateries, rides, bathrooms. It's not like they're going to put the Liberty Tree. It's like just a tree.
Right.
I mean, it's very interesting to learn about that there was a part of Disney that I probably walked by millions of times. Not millions of times, but lots
millions
of times.
A lot.
I've been to Disney probably like 5 times. So like,
but never knew.
Never knew. Yeah.
Well, this is so you mentioned the Hall of Presidents. So Walt's original vision was to sort of have this whole like colonial era thing, like you mentioned, Williamsburg as well. I imagine it's something like that because he wanted like a blacksmith shop, an apothecary, and then an animatronic president show. So they sort of stuck with the president's idea. I have done the Hall of Presidents, not either of the most recent times, but when I was there, like in high school, maybe we had done the Hall of Presidents because I definitely remember seeing it. But yeah, they have all the Liberty Tree restaurants and all that. So anyway, that's sort of more the legacy of the film. But I found that to be a bit interesting for sure. But because this was based around an idea for a TV show rather than a movie, and the budget was cut, they didn't really do a whole lot on location, not a whole lot on actual, colonial looking buildings or whatever. So it's all on sets, and all of the backgrounds were from the Peter Ellenshaw collection. He did all the matte paintings for Treasure Island and pretty much everything since. Which I didn't really notice that much of a difference. Like it all looked okay, but a lot of the movie is kind of dark because it either takes place at night or indoors when they didn't have, electricity. So I don't know that I necessarily would have noticed either way, I guess.
I think I noticed that the backgrounds were there, and I was like, okay, obviously these are painted backgrounds, but they didn't look fake, like cartoony or anything like that. They're like, okay, this looks like what they do these days. Like, just put a green screen there and they put a digital background on it. It's like, okay,
Right.
yeah, obviously, like they're not physical buildings in the background there, or in this case, there was like ships and stuff like that.
Yeah, but they looked great. I mean, obviously, this Ellen Shaw dude was a legend. We've talked about it before, so it makes sense. But really, that's all I know. I know that they did release some action figures based on the movie as sort of a little tie-in. But other than that, I have nothing else on the background of Tremain. So let's hear from Tim now about the story itself of the classic Johnny Tremain.
Okay, so Johnny Tremain is based on the 1944 Newbery Medal winning children's novel of the same name, by Esther Forbes, and it takes place in colonial Boston, Massachusetts, in the years leading up to American Revolution. Basically, 1773 is when we start the journey, and I think 1775 is where we end our story. And it tells the fictional story of a young silversmith's apprentice named Johnny Tremain, and who, after injuring his hand and falsely being accused of theft, joins the Sons of Liberty, taking us through the events of the Boston Tea Party, the British blockade of the Boston port, the midnight ride of Paul Revere, and the battles of Lexington and Concord. Johnny learns about life and about himself, and he might have even found love as the sparks of the revolution start to burn into something brighter. And famous patriots such as Sam Adams, Paul Revere, and James Otis Jr. also entered Johnny's life. So that's the story of Johnny Tremain. And we have the cast, which is Hal Stallmaster. He plays the lead character of Johnny Tremain. And he doesn't do much else in his acting career. I looked it up, and basically he does 3 episodes of The Magical World of Disney, something called
Is he in the Swamp Fox?
The Swamp Fox, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Which was like a 3-part episode series about some type of war or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was on the Mickey Mouse Club. I don't think that was part of the Disneyland, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm confused. But either way, yeah, I know it was made for television and
yeah, I mean, because
much traction.
Because basically it had him listed as the Magical World of Disney. I clicked on it, and it listed this Johnny Tremain, and then also listed like a couple years later Swamp Fox.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it was 2 different things, but I mean, it was just one credit on his IMDb page.
Okay.
And
yeah, I had known the name from Swamp Fox, but yeah, I didn't. I thought, we see so many of the Disney regulars. I thought maybe he was going to go on to do other things, but
no, he was in like maybe 3 1-episode television shows and stuff like that. And I think he does a decent job as the lead character, but we just watched Old Yeller, where Tommy Kirk hit it out of the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
When you compare his acting to Tommy Kirk's, it's a far cry from that. So
well, it is, but we're supposed to be going in order, so we shouldn't be able to compare him to Johnny Kirk, because theoretically we wouldn't have seen Old Yeller yet.
Yeah, that is true. So I think he does a serviceable job as the lead character, taking us through this the historical events that led up to the American Revolution. Then we have our good friend Luana Patton back as the
Love her.
She plays Priscilla, or just Syl Lapham, and we haven't seen her since So Dear to My Heart, which was in 1948. So that's like a good 9 years that we haven't seen her.
These are formative years where you grow up. I mean, she was like 11 or 10 in that movie.
She was so young in that, and she was cute little young girl. She wasn't the greatest actress, but I think here she does a lot better job than Johnny does. I feel like, because she plays a strong woman, a bright female character, especially for that time period. I think that they gave, even the time frame that this is coming out, I thought they had her as a strong female character, which I applaud Disney for. And then you have Jeff York, our favorite,
our buddy.
He plays James Otis Jr., which is one of the famous Patriots, and he is unrecognizable in this role.
We've seen him now. What? This is the fourth role, I think, but fifth movie, right?
Yes, fourth role, fifth movie that we've seen him in.
I feel like he's different in like all of them. And again, I know we wouldn't have seen Old Yeller by this point, but like he's so different in all of them.
Yeah, I feel like his characters are different, but I feel like we haven't seen Old Yeller yet. But in the first three, he doesn't change his appearance at all. This one, his appearance doesn't look anything like. I wouldn't be able to tell that was Jeff York. In the other movies, I'm like, okay, here's Jeff York. He's not playing the same Jeff York character. But this is almost like I would compare it to like Gary Oldman in what was that? The Darkest Hour.
Yeah,
he's unrecognizable. Like,
they
do a really good job of his makeup and everything like that. And he has a different accent or different speaking cadence that he doesn't do. And he does an outstanding home run performance as James Otis. James Otis isn't in the movie that much, but he has two powerful speeches, and they're great speeches.
Well, and I think, I agree with that 100%. But I also think Sebastian Cabot, who plays Jonathan in this movie, we talked about him a little bit with Westward Ho! The Wagons. I knew him from this TV show called Family Affair, which aired maybe like 10 years later. And he looked the same in that as he did in the TV show. But here he looks completely different too. Yeah,
because Sebastian Cabot, he plays Jonathan White, who is basically portrayed as the villain for the first half of the movie. And we saw him once prior to this, which was Westward Ho! The Wagons, and he played, I forget what his name, but he was like a Frenchman at the fort. So he had a completely different accent, and he looked completely different than he did in this one. So yes, he was recognizable as well. And he was a good villain for the first half of the movie. And I don't know, I'm looking forward to see more of his work as well.
I actually don't know if he's in any more of the Disneys. He does voices with Winnie the Pooh, but I don't know if he actually appears in any of them.
Okay.
So this may be it for him.
Well, at least we'll hear his voice some more.
Yes, we'll hear his voice. He plays, I think he voices Tigger. And I think he's also the narrator in the original Jungle Book. So I think we'll hear him a little bit more, but I'm not sure if he appears.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what else he can do, especially with voice work, because, I mean, the two characters he's played have completely different voices thus far. And then, I didn't write down the actors who played Sam Adams or Paul Revere. I looked them up, but I didn't recognize any other acting credits.
They're nobodies, Tim. Rusty Lane, Walter Sandy, who cares?
But I did write down Richard Baymer. He plays Rab, which is, I guess, Johnny's friend that he meets, and his introduction to the Sons of Liberty. And he goes on to star as Tony in West Side Story a few years later than that. And then in the 80s is in Twin Peaks. He's in like all 30 episodes of Twin Peaks. And then he reprises his role for the reboot just like last year or whatever it was.
Okay, so he's still kicking around.
Yeah, he's still kicking around. He's still doing stuff. I scrolled through his acting career, and I didn't see anything else that jumped out besides Twin Peaks and West Side Story. But, I mean, it's Twin Peaks.
But you love West Side Story.
I do.
You probably know his character very well then.
Yeah. He's the lead character, Tony, in West Side Story.
Oh, Tony's the lead. Okay. I forgot. I know, is Maria the lead female?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I know.
So that's the cast. There's one song in this movie. It is "The Liberty Tree,"
That
which
plays at the tree at the park, Tim.
I guess so.
It plays apparently on a loop at the right around the tree.
Okay. It was included on a 1964 Disneyland record entitled "Happy Birthday" and "Songs for Every Holiday."
Is the holiday here July 4th?
I guess. I mean,
because it's a movie about independence, and
I
I don't
guess.
know.
Yeah.
Although Liberty Tree reminds me of Arbor Day.
I do not know. I didn't look up what songs were on this record. I just saw that on Wiki. I wrote it
I'll
down.
figure it out, I guess.
Yeah.
The song was okay.
I thought it was a decent song that was memorable as well. So much so that I mentioned to Aaron that this was the movie that we were doing. Aaron's my wife, FYI to the viewers. He was like, wait, does this the one that has, and she started singing the song. And I was like,
really?
I've never this one. But I guess like her brother knew as well. I guess they watched it in school. As
because of the educational shorts that this movie spawned. I guess maybe one of them features the song,
or they just watched the whole movie. I think
that could
this
be too.
is a great movie as a beginner to the educational of the events leading up to Revolutionary War. I mean, I think it's like, of course, Johnny Tremain is a fictional character, but everybody else that he meets besides Luann Patton's character and Rab, but everybody else like Sam Adams and there's a doctor, he's a real person. Paul Revere, James Otis Jr. All these are real people, part of the leading up to the Revolutionary War. So I think.
So Tremain is not real?
I don't think Johnny Tremain is real.
Oh, okay. I thought because there were so many real people in the movie, I guess I just assumed he was real too.
No, Johnny Tremain is not real. He was made up for the book by.
So it's like Forrest Gump almost, Tim. Johnny Tremain is just there for all these historical events, like the Boston Tea Party and the Paul Revere ride.
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. No, I agree. I think it does explain a lot about like the reasons for the Tea Party and what Paul Revere did. So yeah, it totally makes sense they would use this for educational purposes in school.
Yeah. And growing up, when we would always watch a movie at least once a year for every class and be like, okay,
oh yeah,
here's something, and this is how it ties into whatever we're learning about. So what else I have here?
So what do you think about the pacing, Tim, of this film?
I thought it was okay. I didn't read about the fact that it was originally two parts put into one until after I watched it. So I watched it thinking it was a full movie, and I didn't think it was disjointed like David Crockett's were. I thought this was a cohesive story about Johnny Tremain during the events leading up to the Revolutionary War. It did seem a little episodic in like going through the events, but everything that you do that's a historical drama or something like that goes through the motions of the event. So it didn't seem odd to me. The way they split it up in the two parts of the Disneyland show was you had the Boston Tea Party was called the first one, and then the second one was called The Shot Heard Round the World. So not sure exactly where they split it, but probably after the Tea Party.
I would think so. I feel like the first half, when it's more about the character of Tremain and him, getting his deformed hand and all of this and trying to find work and everything, I thought that was actually more enjoyable than the second half that was much less about him as a character and more about the historical events and everything, because it just seemed very like, all right, there's a bunch of like shooting and there's a bunch of deaths, and he's still part of it, but the whole arc of his character, all of that goes away in the second half, and it becomes just sort of a history lesson, which is fine, it's good, but
Yeah,
in terms of, I found it less entertaining than the first half.
I'll agree with that, but I do feel like they did a decent job of working Johnny Tremain into the events. Like he was part of the reasons why he would find out information, relay it to the Sons of Liberty, and that was what spawned other things. Like he was the one that went and told the one guy to put the lanterns in the steeple of the one church, to one by land, two by sea, to know what to say. I think they did a decent job of working in the story. Yes, most of the character development for Johnny himself was in the first half, when he was dealing with getting his hand deformed, the accident as the silversmith's apprentice, and then also trying to find work, then going to Jonathan Light and saying, hey, I think I'm a long-lost relative because I have this little silver cup or something like that, and then being falsely used
the chalice.
Yeah. Definitely showed his character and his the where he had to be in his mindset to actually kind of join the Sons of Liberty. Because in the beginning of the movie, he was like, oh no, I think I have it good, I'm going to be a really good silversmith, and then kind of had to find things out for himself after that.
Yeah, he had to sort of change his course of action there after the accident, which we've seen in many movies since, of course. Somebody going blind or somebody whatever. But I do think that was handled very well here. I thought I agree his acting maybe isn't the best, but I did sort of like the growth of his character. I like the way the character was written.
Yeah, and I thought he had a good chemistry with Luana Patton, and chemistry between Johnny and Sil, a little bit back and forth in the beginning, and then you're like, will they, won't they? And then you kind of see their relationship grow.
Yeah, but again, with the second half, I don't necessarily like the way her character was sort of brushed aside, because she was, like you said, such a strong female character, like in that first part. And then once everything starts happening, it's like, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a dumb girl, like, goodbye. Which, of course, look, that happened at the time, but she started out as such a strong female. And then once the action, quote unquote, starts happening, we don't really even hear much from her anymore.
She's in there a little bit. She finds she kind of like becomes a little bit of a spy as well as Johnny, and gets some information.
I guess that's true.
Yeah,
but I do think that her acting improved from when she was a child.
Yes.
I don't know if we see her again either in future.
I don't think she's in any other Disney movies, but I looked at her acting career, and it looks like she had a decent acting career moving forward after this. Like looks like she's in a handful of movies, handful of episodes of TV, pretty much constantly for the next probably 15 years. It looked like.
All right, well, that's good. Yes, we started out seeing her so little in like Melody Time and Song of the South. So yeah, it was nice to see her as a more mature person. And I do think her acting was pretty solid. But I think the male adults, like we talked about, even though they're not in it as much, I think kind of steal the show.
Yeah, definitely. So what are your thoughts about how they handled the hand deformity in like
visually, or
yes?
Well, I thought it was interesting because obviously they didn't want to go too like gross out with it. Like I had heard about this character from an episode of The Simpsons, actually. And Bart was so excited because he was like, oh, they should call this guy Johnny Deformed. So in my mind, I had like this really like grotesque, like nub of the hand or whatever. And it's, I don't know. It looks like it was burned, I guess. But I think it was very like played down, which makes sense because it was supposed to be on TV in the 50s and whatever. But I think it was definitely like played down to how it would certainly be shown today in a movie.
Yeah, because they like basically they're like, oh, unwrap your hand, and he unwrapped it, and like they showed like a little bit of burn, and then they pull away, and everybody reacts, so you don't really get to
Yeah.
see it. And then the
And they
rest of the
acted
movie,
it was the grossest thing they've ever seen.
yeah. And then the rest of the movie, like he just has to hold his hand still, and it's like, okay, like that's my hand. And then like a little bit later, the doctor was like, oh, I could fix that real quick for you. And then they don't see it, and then they make a reference like, oh, you're a good writer. He's like, yeah, now that your surgery, my hand's fine. I'm like, why do that earlier? Like when he like to save his silversmith career, they could have just had the one doctor perform the surgery.
But they couldn't find him yet, I guess. I don't know.
Wasn't in with the Sons of Liberty at that point, so they're like, well, we don't care about you. Like,
right. He's not one of them yet.
Yeah.
I did think of that. I just sort of chalked it up to look, they obviously couldn't be too gross with it. But yes, I mean, it looked like it was a little sunburned basically in the palm. And then, like you said, they pulled away. So yeah, it wasn't the best, I would say.
And then after reading, I was like, oh, well, this was a episode of television, not a movie. So obviously the budget wasn't there for that. And I guess they handled it well enough that and especially for, what year are we in? 1956, 1957?
57.
Oh yeah. I guess it was a times. Like, I mean, we definitely seen far worse like CGI or what, like I don't even know what they did before CGI. Like I remember
just sort of practical effects, I guess.
Yeah, practical effects, but bad practical effects like green screen and stuff like that. With the one that really comes to mind is what is it? It's not The Sword and the Rose. It was it
Rob Roy?
Rob Roy, the King of the Highlanders, or something like that.
Yeah, Highland Rogue.
Highland Rogue. That's what it was. Like his chase scene when he was like, they showed him going down the waterfall, like whatever they put down the waterfall didn't look like
yeah, that was really bad.
Like, okay, well at least they actually showed his hand, and he just was like, I just can't move it.
I just feel like, and I know the budgets are different, we're talking all about it, but like this is post 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes.
When everything was just so amazing. The other thing I do kind of wonder, since it was supposed to be for TV, that means it was going to be shown in black and white. So maybe they figured, well, we don't have to show too much specificity with it because it's going to be just on these small black and white televisions anyway. So that could have been part of the thought process too.
True.
Like you think about some of those early like Twilight Zone episodes or whatever, where it's like there's something creepy or something. It's like, to us now watching it on a big screen TV, it's like, oh wow, that looks horrible. But on a little 13-inch screen, maybe it looks completely fine.
Maybe.
But this is not a TV show. They made it a movie, so they should have put a little more budget into maybe working on that.
Yeah, I mean that's probably my biggest flaw of the movie is that. But I thought I mean the practicality of the hand bit. I mean, I think it does wonders for his character arc for the movie.
Oh yeah.
But the way they handled it visually it left me wanting more.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say that, and for me, I think the pacing hurt it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Especially in that second half, like I said, because I really liked getting to know this character, and I liked his entire really transformation. From, I mean, he was still a kid, but obviously a completely different mindset. After the deformity and all. So, all right. Well, if there's nothing else about the movie, let's talk briefly about the DVD. Did you watch the scant extras on that thing?
I did not watch the Liberty story.
Yes. So you pointed this out. So On the DVD, this is a 2005 DVD, which you can still get today. But there's a 22-minute thing called The Liberty Story. On the DVD, it's called The Making of Johnny Tremain, but it really wasn't. It's called The Liberty Story. And you told me that that short is available on Disney Plus, but this movie is not.
Yeah. So on Disney Plus, they have something called The Liberty Story, which is it's like 40 some minutes long. It's 40, I think 46 minutes long. So I think it's the 20 some minutes making of Johnny Tremain paired with Ben and Me, which is the animated mouse short. I remember watching that one time in like school.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, actually.
It's like a little mouse going around with Ben
Yeah.
Franklin, helping Ben Franklin invent stuff and discover electricity and stuff like that.
I totally remember that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
watched that in school as well.
So it's paired with that, and it's one of Walt Disney's classic, hey, Johnny Tremain's going to be out in theaters. Here's the making of, paired with something. So I didn't watch that.
Okay.
I did watch Walt's 2 intros for the 2 parts.
Yeah, those are interesting, right? I always love
Yeah.
seeing Walt, back in the day, talking to everybody about here's what's coming up and here's what we're doing and da 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 da. Yeah, I thought those were interesting to include.
Yeah, I'm happy they had something.
I know so many of these don't have anything. I think the difference is this one is not a Disney Movie Club exclusive. I think this is an actual DVD that a person can just get. Right?
Well,
it doesn't have that yellow label that we
no, it doesn't have a yellow label. It says original Disney film classic on it, but it does have a little star down here at the bottom that says movie awards participating title. So maybe
okay.
I
think for a time they all were. Once they started that program, I think that's just indicating that they have that little flyer inside with the code you can put online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just a regular movie, and that's why. Yeah, I wish, if you're going to give me something exclusive to the Disney Movie Club, one might think that I'm a fan of extra things having to do with Disney and da 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 da. So I don't know why they don't go that extra mile, but I did appreciate they had something on the DVD there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, grading the DVD itself is probably like a B. It's certainly not, a treasure trove of things, but I like the Disneyland intros, of course, and I do like that they included the old Liberty Story. But for the movie itself, I think it's definitely like not one of the best we've seen, but I was impressed with enough of it that I feel like this is probably like a B plus.
I was going to say a B or a B
Okay.
plus. Somewhere in that ballpark, but I'll go with you, B plus. I think it was a good story. It was shot well, directed well, executed well, and I thought it was pretty darn educational for a family movie.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points, and we can give it a little bit of crap for, well, it was supposed to be a TV movie and da da da, but I mean, thinking about today, well, of course, today we're in a whole new era of TV, but certainly back then, putting something on the big screen and having it work, I think, as well as this did, there is something to be said for that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the next one that we're going to do is another one I have to get from the old Disney Movie Club. So we may jump around a little bit again. I'm not sure. I forget the name of it.
Light in the Forest.
That's okay. Yes, The Light in the Forest, which is available nowhere except, I guess, the Disney Movie Club. So, I mean, it may be one that most of them you can at least rent or something on Amazon, but I like to have my collection. So, if not, I think there's a Disney True Life Adventure coming up, and then also I think we're getting dangerously close to Joe and I doing Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, I think that's one of the next couple.
Yeah, I think that's maybe 1958 or 59. So definitely coming up soon. All right. Well, Tim, thank you as always for joining.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.
And we'll see everybody next time. Bye.